So we're standing here in the midst of the press opening for General Idea Haute Culture. General Idea was an artist group formed in 1969, active for more than 25 years. This exhibition at the Art Gallery of Ontario looks at their production, so it is the first major retrospective or overview of their production over many years. They were based in Toronto but had an international reputation. They were interested in painting, sculpture, performance, film, video, publishing. They were important in Canada in part because of that, which is to say they were involved in so many different aspects of production, but they were also perhaps the most observant artists that looked at issues of popular culture, corporate culture, marketing, the whole way in which ideas were formed in the public sphere, and became great critics of that. And much of their work has an edge and a questioning of established authority.
I would say that the art of General Idea is an attempt to question the reality, the social field, the life itself in a transgressive and subversive way, and in a way to recreate kind of an alternative version of the real, using in particular the tool of the fiction.
General Idea started in a kind of accidental way. Originally we were just sharing a house to save money, and then we started doing projects together and never stopped. I think it grew out of the counterculture of the 60s, out of this idea that several people could live within a communal structure and have a kind of intellectual life together as well. So it's not, we didn't really decide to form General Idea, it just happened, and we never had a goal. Rather, we were just exploring what interested us, and it took us a long way.
It's great for us to have the exhibition here in Toronto. It was first in Paris, where it was a great hit for more than 3 months, a great moment for them and of real importance to the European art world. This is its only Canadian stop, and it's great because in many ways the Art Gallery of Ontario is the home of General Idea. They've had more than 6 exhibitions here. Miss General Idea Pavilion, which is the core project of their career, was staged at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and it's just wonderful. It has a really good homecoming feel, but at the same time we're excited by the idea that so many people will be introduced to General Idea for the first time, and it's truly both captivating and contemporary.
This is the first retrospective considering the whole body of work of General Idea, and we're exhibiting more than 300, I think about 340 works actually, and the idea was to try to consider all epochs and all the main questions in the work of General Idea. So the pathway is organized in 5 sections. The first one is devoted to the question of the artist itself and the creative process, and the very key question of the glamour in the creative process of General Idea. The second one deals with the mass culture, that is to say the role of the media, the consideration of all forms of media, as well as the economics of the art world and the artwork, and the role played by the public within the circulation of the artwork. The third topic is about architecture and archaeology and the fictitious building of the Miss General Idea Pavilion, and at the same time the discovering of the ruins of that very pavilion itself. The fourth part is devoted to the sexuality, to be considered as a social organization to be subverted. And the last and fifth topic is about the late AIDS project, started in 1987 and which ran until 1994. And this fifth topic is spread out in the whole exhibition, as was the AIDS project itself in the social space.
When Jorge and Felix and I first began working together as General Idea in '69, I was really straight out of school. I'd produced very little individual work. And so I began my adult life working in a collaborative team, and that lasted for 25 years. When they died in '94, I realized I had no skills to work as an individual artist. I didn't actually have the slightest idea how to go about it. So it took me, there was the grieving process, which of course made it difficult as well, but I also just did not know how to be an individual artist. It took me about 5 years before I produced any work of my own. And I started trying to work on collaborations with younger artists. And then I realized in a way that Jorge and Felix were still with me, and that I could still work with them even though they weren't physically here. And I began by producing death portraits, portraits of them in their last days. So being a solo artist, I find in general my approach is to be as collaborative as possible, especially with artists who are much younger than myself. And I don't really work in the classic solo artist kind of way. I'm not alone in my studio tormenting myself. I'm really more out there in the world communicating with other people.
This show has been exhibited first in Paris at the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris, and we've been trying to show, of course, the main works and the most important works, but also to try rediscovering some unknown works. You'll see, for example, never exhibited work since 1979 called Playing the Triangle, which has been shown only once in Italy at that date and which never appeared since then. You'll be able to see a lot of works which never appeared since the big exhibition about Miss General ID Pavilion in 1984. So that has been an attempt to try to show some unknown artworks. I would tempted to say they're all special, but there are, for example, the test pattern TV dinner plate installation, which is a very large-scale installation of ceramic plates painted with the test pattern motif, which is a very important question about TV and the content of TV and the power of media. I would mention also the armory of the Miss General ID Pavilion, which was thought as kind of an heraldic, fictitious heraldic of that fictitious construction, which was the Miss General ID Pavilion. We could also mention works like One Day of HZT and 1 Month of HZT, which are pills of HZT, so related with the AIDS crisis, for example.
The great experiences of coming to see the exhibition, and it's on 2 floors of our new contemporary tower, so it's really got a terrific location and real celebration about it. But one of the things that I think people will experience is how contemporary the work is. So you have these artists who are working from 1969 onwards. Much of the work is from the 70s, from the 1980s, and yet when you walk through this exhibition, it feels as if you're thinking about and reflecting on the work of a contemporary artist. In many ways, that's what great art is. It's not just of its time, it is timeless. It addresses issues that continue to be of interest decade after decade, and I think that when people come and see the General Idea exhibition, which is free with gallery admission, they will see artists whose place in Canadian art history is secure and who no doubt will be seen to be more and more important as time goes on.
I use the computer, I use the internet, I use social media a lot, all the time. And in a way, what I do online is an integral part of what I do as an artist. There are other artists that are focusing almost completely on the internet, and of course, it's not possible for them to have a life in a gallery because what they do is not marketable. So the internet has created a kind of strange situation culturally. The structure of the art world as it's existed for the last 20 years has a big question mark beside it now. We don't exactly understand how these things are going to unfold and how the art world will operate in the future. But I think it's a very important part of what's happening now. And also Canada has always been so much in the forefront of the communications industry, and also with people like Marshall McLuhan and so on, the communications theory. I think that it's really important that we support artists who are investigating social media and the internet, and try to see where that will take us. Well, I think the kind of internet-based record of a collection, of a museum collection, for example, is quite important for research purposes. I don't think it's so much an active part of the culture, but for people, it really allows research to happen in a completely different way than it could have happened before. So, for example, the National Gallery of Canada has put their complete library online, and a certain amount of their collection, but I'm more interested in the library because everything is online. And that allows scholars who are doing research to identify what's out there in the world, and then they can actually physically go to where the substantial collections are and then have a physical interaction. So I see it more as being involved with research than with the active culture-making industry. Well, I've been living in New York for a very long time, so my knowledge of the I probably do know the Canadian cultural world pretty well, actually, despite being out of the country. It's, I think, a difficult point in culture. For example, the Netherlands has just ended cultural funding completely, pretty much, which is very dramatic, given that the Netherlands were one of the most generous countries to the cultural world. And so I've been thinking a lot about that recently. I think what we have here in Canada is very special. The network of artist-run centres, for example, the ways in which artists participate in their communities, that they're part of the fabric of the life of the country. I think that's very unique and very strong and important thing. So I really feel strongly that funding needs to stay in place, and that the benefits are enormous compared to the cost. So that's not really a change. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm really proud of how the cultural world works in Canada, and that I hope that it will continue and not be undercut.
We're really pleased when the exhibition's here, and it's up until January at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto, that its presentation is made possible by the volunteer community of the Art Gallery of Ontario, by the Canada Council, by the support of some wonderful private collectors and believers in the Art Gallery of Ontario, Tom Bjarnason and Woodrow Wells, and also Paul Bain and Lisa Spalding, who have come forward because of their belief that an exhibition like this deserves a larger audience. And we think that's what will happen, that people will come, they'll be intrigued, they'll respond to works of art which are really, truly part of a Canadian tradition.
What else maybe you like to